The Sikha we will be learning is the Sichas Chelik Chavov, the first Sikha to Parsha Siso. It talks about the mitzvah of Machzis HaShekel. If in Posik Zeh Yitnu, by Tzivu for Machzis HaShekel, but they commanded the Yidden to give a Machzis HaShekel for the Mishkan, the Posik uses the word Zeh Yitnu. This is what they shall give. Now, usually when you use the word Zeh, it means we're pointing at something that we're able to see. The Lashon in some places is Meire Be'etzba. When you say Zeh, you're showing with the finger, look this. We're not talking about something, but we're talking actually something that's in front of you. So what does it mean here when the Eibusha said, Zeh Yitnu, this is what they should give. They should give a Machzis Shekel, but he used the word Zeh. Zogen Chazal, the Chazal tell us in Yerushalmi and in Tanchum and in Medrash Rabbi, Rashi brings it down, that why does it say Zeh? Kimi Matbei Shalish, Heitzi HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Eibusha took out Take, a coin of fire. A Machzis al Shekel coin, a coin that is a Machzis, but it's made of fire. And he showed it to Moshe, and he said, Zeh Yitnu, this is what they should give. Like this, everyone should give a matbeya like this, and he actually showed them the coin, but the coin made of fire. Now, what was so hard to understand what it means a Machzis HaShekel, a Eibusher had to show him a matbeya shalish. In other words, if he wouldn't show it to him, he wouldn't understand what it means. What's the problem here? His Tissa Mavayar, so Tissa in Chulm explains Astama ala Dover. Moshe Rabbeinu wondered about it. Ma yuchal adam litnu keifer nafshe. Since the Machzis HaShekel is supposed to be keifer nafshe, it's supposed to be the redemption for the soul, for the nefesh. So what he couldn't understand, not what a matbeya is, what a Machzis HaShekel is. He couldn't understand how could giving a Machzis HaShekel bring about a keifer nafshe, a redemption for the nefesh. B'meile, this is what the problem was, and this is why David had to show him. Oh, but as for the Tabir, the Rebbe says this needs an explanation. Why was it hard for Moshe Rabbeinu to understand? He wondered how a Machzis HaShekel could be keifer nafshe, how that could forgive for your nefesh. Jeder poshet shtot magid. Every simple people who say speeches, a shtot magid, which is not a special person, but a person used to give speeches, droshes in the city. Which his brain, his intellect is no comparison whatsoever to the intellect of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was the nifka mekomin asher ha'odam asher hisik Yosef. It's the lotion of the Rambam. He says in Pirush HaMishnah, Moshe Rabbeinu was the chosen human being that he grasped with his seichel more than anybody else. He was the completion and the highest level of seichel. So a regular baldarshan, a regular people who gives a speech, person gives a speech, is no way compared to him. Nevertheless, he says, even he could explain it very simple. When a Yid is Mekayim HaMitzvah, kumt in der Far Aschar, ulopomim Aschar God will be Yisrael. When a Yid does a mitzvah, he deserves a reward. Sometimes a very big reward. Like it actually is in the Apostle, it says, you will follow my laws. I'll give you rain and all the brachas. All the brachas was werden dort ausgerechnet, all the brachas that are mentioned there. So we know that for doing a mitzvah, you can get a reward, and a big reward. Well, there is eben nidin dedan, could be the same thing here. Al schar for mekayim, the mitzvah Machzis HaShekel, vakumt mekayim nafshe. Why is it not possible that as a reward for doing this mitzvah Machzis HaShekel, you get a keifer nefesh, you get redemption for your nefesh. In order 6, the Rebbe says, and concerning tzedakah, which is also giving money, we actually find that. Because it says in Medrash, that the union of tzedakah, what could tzedakah do? That when you give tzedakah, this could bring the Eibusher should give you life. It says if you give tzedakah to a poor man, the Eibusher said, well, you gave life to that person now that he had food. You gave him life. I'll save your life of your child. So we see that for tzedakah, which is similar to Machzis HaShekel. And this is something already we know in the Torah. There is a union of giving people money, the mitzvah of milas chasodim, etc., etc. And there we see, Taka, that what happens as a reward, you get life. So what's hard to understand here? Everyone understands very simply that you could have a mitzvah, Machzis HaShekel, and for that you get keifer nafshe. Is was in the pelle, una greiser pelle? What's the wonder and the big wonder for Moshe Rabbeinu, by Moshe? But durch the mitzvah git meschar keifer nafshe. What was wondrous by him that for this mitzvah you get keifer nafshe? Why is it not something that's not understood? That's one question. Why is it a pella? Why is it a wonder? Ich is nicht verstanden der Entfer von dem Eibischen. Hero Matbei Shleish. Now, also not understood. So what was that? If this was the problem Moshe had, how does Machzis HaShekel, how is it possible it should make Kefer Nafshe? What was the Eibishter answer? He showed him a Matbei Shleish. How does he answer the question? Number one, was it der Diuk Matbei Shleish Davke? Why did he, in order to answer it, if somehow by showing it, it answers the question, so why did he have to show him Davke a fire? Could have showed him a regular Matbei, a coin, and if that answers somehow. And the Rebbe explains deeper the question. If the reason he showed him a coin of fire, because everything that is above in the spiritual heavens is fire, called fire. Like it says a posting by Malachim, that his servants, his Malachim, is a flame fire. So we see creates other things. We find fire when you want to say something ruchni spiritual, we call it fire. Und der Fad, therefore, if everything ruchnis is fire, then the Reibishter beweist that over Mesuyim is a B'tzura Seisha. The Reibishter shows something, a heavenly thing, so it is in the form of fire. But if that's the reason why it was fire, you doch nicht nötig, dass du matke sein bemjuchat da. So why do we have to stress it over here? All the things above are fire, so we understand ourselves. Don't mention Dafke fire. They could have said David showed them a coin. We'll understand ourselves a fire, because everything that's shown by David from above is fire. When name is sagen, but if you're going to say the other way, as Lule der hat Goshem at Bei Shalish felt me gekent meinen that the Rebbe should be wiesen at Bei Kipshute. And then you can say no. If the Chazal wouldn't tell us that it was a coin of fire, we would think that it wasn't fire. He showed them a normal coin about Bei Shal Kesef. When he showed them a silver coin and not fire. And we find that too, that David shows something from above and it's physical. Al derech, like Yemesas HaMishkan Kemishpote, as Rebbe said, you should put up the Mishkan. As you were shown on the mountain, what did Rebbe show him? He showed him the Mishkan. Was man not im Bewiesen, dem Tavnis von der Mishkan Gashmi, up the Pshuta Shemik, a simple pshat, and in the Orah 11, the Rebbe even quotes, look at the Gemara. So what the pshat is, the Rebbe showed him a physical Mishkan. So maybe you could have learned here also, if it wouldn't tell us it was fire, we could have learned the Eibishter actually showed him a coin, a physical coin of silver. For the Tzvir Lidach. So now we you have a question on the other side. It was his anders macht es a shekel, was by him is muchar zu weisen, mit Bei Shleish Davke. So why Taka did he have to show him here a fire? It's or you don't have, if it's obviously fire, he didn't have to tell us. And if it's not obvious it's fire, so what makes us say, why did he Taka have to show him a fire? That's one question. The main question is, who is the answer of Moshe Rabbeinu's Tmiyah? Yazei kennt in the scene of the Machzis HaShekel sein Kefer Nafshei, durch dem was HaKadosh Baruch Mat Bei Shalish. Where lies the answer to Moshe Rabbeinu's wonder how a Machzis HaShekel could bring redemption for your nefesh? How is that answered by him showing him a Mat Bei Shal fire, a coin of fire? How? See, if he wouldn't have known what a coin is, let's say a simple shot, we think he didn't understand what a coin is, he showed him a coin. Showed the fire, whatever, but he showed him. But that wasn't the question. Moshe Rabbeinu knew what a Machzis HaShekel is. The question is, how did that bring about Kefer Nafshe? So what happened when he showed him a coin of fire? How does that answer the question? You could say that the two questions we just asked before, one question answers the other, meaning like this. The answer on the second question, on the question of Moshe Rabbeinu, that he asked, how could Machzis HaShekel be a Kefer Nafshe? And the first question was, why not? So, and the second question was, how did it answer? So the Rebbe says like this. So on the answer of the question, how it could work, is so here we have, the Eibusha showed him a coin of fire. That was the answer to his question was, why? How could that work? So the Eibusha answered him, he showed them a matbei of fire. And meant to say, when Aid is Mekayim a mitzvah, when Aid has a mitzvah, and every mitzvah of the Eibishter is like fire. Like there's a posik that says, Kaid vorai koesh, my words are like fire. So whatever the Eibishter talks, or mitzvah, the Eibishter is fire. So when Aid does this mitzvah, Machzis HaShekel, durch a matbeya gashmi is through a physical matbeya. Valachas kama v'kama when it is Mekayim the mitzvah mitchayis nislavish eshe benafshe. Certainly if he does it with an enthusiasm of the fire of his soul. That's called the Eshe Benafshe. Vertes Aninya Shalesh. So that makes it into a fire. It becomes a fire. When the Riber kennt it, Nisim is on Kefer Nafshe. So you could be Kefer Nafshe. In other words, the question of Moshe was, how does this work, the Kefer Nafshe? And the answer they should show them if it's fire. Because I'm a Be'ez Shalesh. Since it's a mitzvah, first of all, every mitzvah is fire. Number two, if you do it with even more fire of your neshama, then it's something very special, and that's the answer how it could bring Kefer Nafshi. So now the first kasha comes back, which comes even stronger. If the whole answer is that because you're doing a mitzvah, and the mitzvah has the power of bringing Kefer Nafshi, so the first question comes back. So why did they wonder? This explanation that if you do a mitzvah that becomes concept of fire is number one. Everyone knows that. Every person who gives a speech could say that the reason why it works is because if you do a mitzvah is fire. And the second thing, mitzvahs, concerning all mitzvahs, every mitzvah is like that. In every mitzvah, when you do a mitzvah, you bring down in the mitzvah the spirituality of it, was is hinted in fire. If wasn't it mere from Moshe Rabbeinu or by the meaning of Machzah Shekel, then why did Moshe Rabbeinu wonder? It's kasha that we asked before. The whole answer is because a mitzvah has fire. Certainly, if you do it with your fire, but the idea of a mitzvah is fire. Moshe didn't understand. So Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know that. Every little simple person knows that. Moshe didn't know that. And also, why? And another prat here. This is by every mitzvah. Here we're saying something special about Machzah Shekel. So what was his question? And what was the answer? Machzah Shekel is something special. What was special about Machzah? Every mitzvah does that. If the answer was that it's fire, a mitzvah is fire, every mitzvah is that. Zeisvei, besides that. Absolutely them, if it's only for this, but the Rabbi so zognation as durch the mitzvah wird die Matbeya wenn If that's the whole answer that he's telling that every mitzvah is fire, that's the answer. He could have told him that. Why did they have to show him? If he's giving him an explanation how a mitzvah works, that's the way to do it, to tell him. The whole Torah and all the mitzvahs that Eibishter gave to Moshe, how did they give it to him? By telling him. So he could have told him too. Why did the Eibishter have to take out a coin of fire and tell him that this coin is Eish, and B'meile show him that this could cause Kefer Nafshi because it's fire? Why didn't he just tell him that? And why you have to show him for? Von Dafke was bei dem Minion hat gefordert, die Pulum Yuchedes von Eibishten zu beweisen, mit Be'ez Shleish und Zogna Yitno. Since Dafke in this Indian was needed, Hashem should do a special act to show him at Be'ez Shleish, and in the top of that to say to him, this is what you should give, is Muchrech to Zogn that proves us, aber Machzah Shekel is do an Indian Yuchet was nito by all other mitzvahs. There's something in Machzah Shekel that is not there by the mitzvahs, and that is something that Eibishter had to do something special. He couldn't just answer him that it's fire, because that's by every mitzvah, something special, and it had to come through showing what it is. The Rebbe will explain it. In the Kudas Abir and them, the point of the explanation is like this. Yeshleim, you can say like this. The Dinyan for Schar mitzvah can sein of Tzayifan. The Dinyan that Hashem gives a reward for a Yid doing a mitzvah, there are two ways. Could be in two ways. Number one way is the Asiyas HaMitzvah is Azapul was Mitzat Teichen Inyon and brings Schar Pleini. That when you do this mitzvah, it's a kind of mitzvah that the content of the mitzvah brings automatically this reward. The Schar is Amasuvit from Pulas HaMitzvah. The reward is an automatic result of the mitzvah. The mitzvah itself causes this and this reaction. So the reward is not really a side reward. It's a reaction of the act that you did. But there's another way. What you did, the meaning of the mitzvah has nothing to do. Seichel doesn't understand what's the connection between this and the specific reward given. This is what Eibishter wanted. So geben them dosen geschar for them kiyum from the gewisse mitzvah. The Eibishter wants to give this reward for this mitzvah. So sometimes the reward itself is a result of the mitzvah, because that's what the mitzvah is all about. And sometimes the reward is something that has nothing to do, there's nothing in the mitzvah that brings about this reward, but this is what the Eibishter wanted. And the Rebbe explains it. The Kashem, we benegeh the mitzvah satz, mit seiner Frau, mitzvah was mit Zudzei, nicht mit Zadat Tamner, weil Gzeire gesagt, ich will kikach, just like in mitzvahs themselves. There are certain mitzvahs, there is a reason. And there are certain mitzvahs that there is no reason why we want to do it. So why do we do it? Because that's what the Eibishter said you have to do. So just like by mitzvahs, we find that there's no logical, rational explanation for the mitzvah. Azay is able to get schara mitzvah. So too when it comes to reward. As es ken sein, as a gewisse mitzvahs. Eich von dem Suk mishpotim. So man geb maschar godel berach a mitzvah. It's possible that certain mitzvahs, and even mitzvahs that normally the mitzvah itself has a rationale, has a reason. But the schar could be something such a big schar, which compared to the mitzvah doesn't seem to be connected. So why would be such a big schar? That's what the Eibishter wants. So there is such a thing as a schar that you don't understand. What the connection between the schar? Fine. Now applying that to us, the schar from kefer nafshe for the mitzvah from the sinis machzis shekel. The reward for the mitzvah machzis shekel to give kefer nafshe is a reward that is no rationale to it, seemingly. Al piseichel makes no sense. Why? The Baal does machzis shekel. Amad beigashmes kefer nafshe ruchni is haben kann nicht since giving the machzis shekel, which is a physical coin. And kefer nafshe, redemption for a person's neshamer, a person's nefesh, which is ruchni, have no comparison. These are the complete opposites. Kefer nafshe, the complete opposites. But by tzedakah, like we said before, we understand that when you give tzedakah to a poor man, this will save your life, because when the mitzvah was saving someone's life. So here we understand it too. But here, the kefer of your nefesh means it's a ruchnis dike kapora, it's a forgiveness for your neshama. How does that come through a gashmas dike coin? And the Rebbe says, in other words, we see the difference also when it talks to a person's service of Hashem. The expression here is not so simple, no, so clear, but he's saying he wants to show an example. The tachlis, the purpose of a person is to serve the Eibishter. Now, in serving the Eibishter, of the person's tachlis, there are different things. So he gives an example. You serve the Eibishter with momen. What's momen? Kesef azov, silver and gold. Everything that's in the world you have to use to serve. But here, what are you using? When you're using money to serve Hashem, it's a very low thing. Money is a very, very Gashmi. In Gashmis itself, it's a very low level. And in the order 18, the Rebbe says that's why we find in a posik that money is called hayukum asher beragleim. Hayukum means something that holds up, but it uses the word feet. So we see the pasuk connects money to feet. Feet is the lowest part of the person, to show that money is a very, very low thing. And I mentioned, we see that a person has a desire for money, it could lower a person to the lowest level. And in order 19, the Rebbe says, we see that by the Chet Egel. What made the Yidden make the Egel? So it says because they had a lot of silver and gold. And there's a pasuk that says, Kesef I gave him a lot of kesef, a lot of gold, silver, and they made an egel. And by the way, this is the machzas hasheket is a forgiveness for the egel. So we see by the egel it all came from money. So this all shows money is a very low thing. These are skimlu rabbanon. They know the ma'amet atzmam amein. A certain halachas that rabbanon said we know for sure that if it comes somebody that says money is going to be ruined, something, a person for sure will not hold himself back from doing so. Shabbos, let's say, Chama made such dinim by the fire because it might burn his house, because they said if we're going to let you do certain things, you will definitely go and do worse things. Because we know a person can't hold himself back when it comes to saving his money. Another expression is Odom bo l'almamein. A person gets completely confused when it comes to his money. He gets confused. So money is something very, very low. The Ashleimer, the Rebbe goes even more to show money is low. You see in the place where do we get silver and gold? Push it in the physical sense. Silver and gold is daimim. Daimim are unmovable objects. There's no life. So in suga daimim gufa, in the daimim itself, is mekayim berubim amamaki adomatavke. Where is there silver and gold? In the depth of the ground. And depth of the ground physically shows beruchnias it's very, that in its level, it's very low. In order 22, the Rebbe says, it says in different places that a mountain which is high shows that it's a daimim. The mountain is a daimim, but it shows a higher level. So depth of the ground is a lower level. So it's tachten, shem tachten, matamene. So the money, the silver, gold, is the lowest, that's nothing lower. When the noch muss ich sein, mitzad of the kesef kudlazov. And even after you dig it out, you got to still work on it. It's still not usable. You got to purify it with all kinds of, what goes into the furnace, etc., etc. So this just shows how a matbeya shekel, which is like silver, which is a coin, is very, very low. Lidach is kefer nafshe. On the other hand, when we speak about redemption of a nefesh, soul, the nefesh, which means a nefesh, even of a guy, is a dovar achinaila, is something spiritual, something very high. Alachas kama v'kama nefesh for nayidin was a chelik kama almam, certain the neshama, the nefesh of Yidin, which are part of Hashem. So that's certainly low. So here we're saying machzis hashekel is the lowest, in Gashmis Gufa the lowest. The kaifa nafshe, which is the reward, is the highest. Hot cannot nicht die Seichel an die Pula von der Sinas Mama Gashmi Tachlas Hayiride. So man zateichen in yon the pale in the minyan from Kefer Nafshe from Achil Kalmam Mishtachas Hilo. So it makes no seichel, no rationale to understand how the act of giving physical money, which is the lowest, should the teichen of what you're doing should cause Kefer for the nefesh from the neshama of a higher level. So, in which category would this go? We said there are two categories, two fanim of reward for a mitzvah. Sometimes the reward is understood. We see how the mitzvah brings this reward. This doesn't follow that. This goes according to, this is the second way, that it's a reward that doesn't, we don't see in any way, no rationale how that is a reward for the pool or the act that you did. Now, you could say, on the other hand, we said every mitzvah becomes spiritual, becomes like fire, which is the symbol for spirituality. So what's our question? We're asking, how can the reward for machzah shekel, such a low thing, be such a high thing? But we said every mitzvah is connected to ruchnis, with fire. It's not a change that the coin itself is changed. From the reish kum to the mitzvah ruchnis. There's a change here. There's a fire here because the mitzvah aspect. It's not the coin becomes the ruchni. The mitzvah aspect that you're using the coin for, that becomes ruchni. But the matbeya asif like the matbeya gashmis, the coin remains a physical coin. Kum to Tissa comes out that the pulas ha-mitzvah, the nesinah for matbeya gashmis gufa, but the coin itself, when you give that physical coin itself, because the coin is only physical, and that is even if it's a mitzvah has ruchnias, but since it remains a physical coin, how could that bring about a reward of such a high spiritual level? That was the doubt, the question, the wonder that Moshe Rabbeinu had. That means like this: because of the seichel, the intellect of Moshe, which is seichel the Torah. Moshe's thinking, Moshe's understanding was a Torah to give you. He's always going. It came out at the schar from Kefer Nafshe of the Nesina from Machzah Shekel together Kuka. But it came out that the reward of Kefer Nafshe for Machzah Shekel is in the form of a chukah. Chukah means it has no rationale. Al piseichel is a dover tamua. Yesh mokem here al piseichel. According to the intellect, it makes no sense. And there is even a possibility to question it. But because the Eibusha wanted it, you don't question it. But it just shows that in seichel there is a place to question, but you don't because the Eibusha doesn't want you to. But this seichel doesn't make sense. Okay, so that could be that type of thing. On the other hand, the food, the Eibusha wrote nicht magdir given and nicht angerufen the mitzvah machzah shekel achukah, since Hashem didn't describe and say that the mitzvah machzah shekel falls into the category of a chukah, is sicher as es ist do hasbar in them. So there must be an explanation. When the fire Tom Moshe, so Moshe wondered, Ma yuchal the little kefer nafshe. What's the logic? There must be some logic here, because the Torah never said it's a chukah. So what's the logic in this idea that through giving a machzah shekel you could cause kefer nafshe? Wie can sein abir behesber of them apiseichel ad in the sinne from the matbeya gashes machzah shekel the apula was kenuften kefer nafshe? How could there be an explanation in your intellect, in your seichel, that giving a physical matbeya the machzah shekel should cause kefer nafshe? So that he was wondering, not he questioned it. He was wondering, there must be a seichel. What's the seichel? And he's using a seichel. And he says, and you're telling me that's not a chukah, so obviously there's a seichel behind. What's the seichel? Then met him the Rabbi again for the mitzvah sarei matbei shalei yishvam. So Hashem answered this question by showing in the coin of fire. and told him this is what they should give. What did he mean with that? The Rabbi showed him when Eden give machzah shekel, where devil the matbeya atzmo, that when Eden gives a machzah shekel, what happens really? The coin itself, nicht nur mit the ruchnis from the mitzvah shabo, not only because there's a spirituality in it, and it has a mitzvah, you're doing a mitzvah, so the mitzvah is spiritual, but mele, it's a matbeya shalish. Not only because of that, but the matbeya itself, the coin, which looks physical, becomes a matbeya shalish, is a coin of ruchni, a coin of fire. The mele is versteht man dem Keshet zwischen dem Teichen von der Sinis machzah shekel und schar von dem Kefer nafsheh. So the mele, if you're telling me that the coin becomes ruchni, also when you give that coin, you're giving a ruchnistic thing, but the coin became ruchni. Now I have to add, the Rebbe doesn't say it here. That how do we see that it became ruchni? We don't see it. But the Eibishter told Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm telling you, when you give a machzah shekel, it's a special thing by machzah shekel. That if you give this mitzvah machzah shekel, you're giving this coin is spiritual. Oh, so it's spiritual. It's no kasha. Kasha was how could something physical so low bring kefer nafshe, which is so spiritual. So he said, when you give that machzah shekel, it is spiritual. The coin itself that you're given looks like a coin, but it's not. Schenke by tzedakah, not like by tzedakah. By tzedakah, tut es klal nit suf klal nit matbeya. There is not the coin that does it. It's the mitzvah that's behind it. Or like Rabbi says here, Kimaimer Chazal, like the Chacham and Telvis, they also give a simple reason. The Eibusha says, by tzedakah, why will it help your nefesh? Because it's midah k'neged midah, measure for measure. You helped someone else's nefesh. You gave someone who's hungry and is dying, and you gave him money, saved his life. I'll give you your life. So that makes a lot of sense. But it's not the coin, the physical coin that happens. But by the coin, the physical coin happens. But the question is, what is the meaning behind it? So it is like that, but we still need the explanation. What is the pshat? How does it work? Not what is the pshat. That is not clear. I mean, not clear. That we don't know. But that's what the Eibishter does. But how does this happen? That the coin itself is not a coin. It looks like a coin, also, but it's not. It's called cheshelesh. Now you could answer, if you know why, because the coin of machzah shekel was used for a mitzvah. It was the coin itself became a mitzvah. Now, what did it happen? What did they use the coin for? So one of the machzah shekel that was used was for making the adonim, the sockets of the mishkan. You took that silver that you gave as a machzah shekel, you melted it and made part of the mishkan. Oh, so here if you made it part of the mishkan, so then it's already ruchni. So the coin itself became ruchni. So the Rebbe says it's not true. For the machzah shekel aber hat man gemacht der adonim l'mishkan. So he says the opposite. What did they do with the machzah shekel? They didn't change it to ruchni. They made a mitzvah out of it, but they didn't change the ruchni. All they did, they made the adonim to the mishkan, and that's still gashmi. Is wie can sein dover eze shiyeh ma afilu adonim kefel nafshe. Moshe Rabbeinu's lashon was this. The Tissa says, he said, what can be kefel nafshe? He meant to say, not only the machzah shekel as a coin, even if you use the machzah shekel as adonim lemishkan. That's why he said the word ma, whatever you're going to do with it. A coin remains a coin. So what made it so that this became it? And the Eibishter is answering him that this is different than any other mitzvah. And how could it be kefel nafshe? Because it is ruchni. What makes it ruchni? And making the adonim doesn't make it ruchni, because making the adonim is still gashmi. So even making the adonim, which is gashmi, there's a mitzvah there. You're using it for the mishkan. But how does it make it ruchni? The beer in them. So the answer is like this: the mit gufe was a reya kadosh baruch matbei shreish und gesagt yitnu hat der Eibishter peil given und nuf gemacht achidish. When the Eibishter showed him, this is the answer why he had to show him. When the Eibishter showed him this coin of fire, and he said, "This is what you shall give." This the Eibishter, by doing that, he transformed a new thing, something new. Der machzah shekel was Yidden haben gegeben damals, that caused that the machzah shekel that Yidden gave then, und das wird nimmt bei mitzvahs machzah shekel tomit kol hayomim, and since, as the Rebbe will say later, since the machzah shekel that we do is a continuation of that, so by Mela this happens every time, always, all the generations. The machzah shekel that you give is nit nor a matbeya gashmis nor a matbeya shleish. It's not only a physical coin, which it is, but that physical coin is also a spiritual coin. Das heißt, demult is nischadish geworden. The Eibishter had to do something to change, because that's not normal. The Eibush did something to change as the Matbeya with the Eibush Rabbi Moshe. This coin that the Eibush showed Moshe. The Matbeya is the Bishorsho Eish Takaskish Takovet. Matbeya, the way it's in the source. It says in Chazal that where did he take the coin of fire? From under the Kisei HaKavod, under his chair of glory, whatever the Eibush took it. Which means that's the shadish of the coin down here. So what the Eibush took it from there and showed it to Moshe, and he said, this is what you should give. He said, he showed it to him, and that caused that this is a coin, that any coin a Yid gives from Achzah Shek is this. In other words, whatever is in the Shadish is by the Yidden down here. Das means like this, Rebbe says. In Zug of der Zuvas durch der Mitzvahs, man mamshich und peil in der Matbeya Ninyan Funeish, was das is azeba al mitzvahs. Now, in addition to the fact that every mitzvah brings an eish. But mainly, if you do a mitzvah with a coin, the coin becomes a matbeya shleish, and that's by every mitzvah. It's by machzah hashekel do achidush miyuchad machzah, the special chidush, and the matbeya atzmo is matbeya shleish. The matbeya itself is a matbeya shleish, and the Rebbe explained this. The chidush in them is not b'sheisho as b'sheisho matbeya. It's not telling you that you should know any coin that you give for machzah hashekel. It's rooted. There's a root to that in higher worlds. A matbeya shleish. That's not what he's saying. Das is by all gashmi. That's by all physical things. But they all werden nicht von sei ruch musik nicht. Not only mitzvahs. Every physical thing in the world comes down as a shtalshelis from its higher source, and it comes down from level to level till it becomes a physical thing. So in Sheirish, they're all ruchnisdike things. Aber sie imake gefindt sich und bleibt lemeidlen. Sie seine lamata der gashmi. The source, the root of everything is ruchni, but it stays there. When it comes down in a hishtalshelis, it goes from level to level till it turns into a physical thing, and then remains physical, even by a mitzvah. The root of that coin or that object that you do a mitzvah is ruchni, but down here it's gashmi. But by machzah shekel is different. Not in them was eich noch dem wie the matbei is nishtalshel geworden. What he's saying is that even after the coin came down, became a coin. And it's nishtalshel from higher levels. There's a spiritual coin, and then lower level. Finally, it came down in this physical world. By doing the mitzvah machzah shekel, there's a change in the coin. It becomes a matbei shleish. In other words, the question was, how does it happen? That's why there had to be a special act. It's not just like that. By a person doing it, wouldn't happen. That's like every mitzvah. Here, the Eibishter had to do something special. Now we'll understand the special chidus machzah shekel was a gefordert apulam yichedes from Eibishter but beishlei heitzi v'amar zayitnu legab andere mitzvahs. Why here there was supposed to be a special act that you had to take it out and take them at beishlei, tell them this is what they should give, different than every other mitzvah where he just told them about it. This is what we find by other mitzvahs, that since it's a mitzvah, it brings down a ruchnisdike life, so to speak, ruchnisdike koyach, in this physical act that you do. We know that. And it says in Order 32, this is the whole concept of Matan Torah, as Chassidus explains. Till Matan Torah, Gashmis, Ruchnis didn't have a connection. By Matan Torah, the Eibishter made that when you do a mitzvah with Gashmis, the Ruchnisdike comes down in it. Your mamshich, a Ruchnisdike union in the physical Gashmi. But it was also in Aneifen was the Gashmi Atzmei, is und bleibt Matim im Keirei, mea Ruchni. It's still, even though you bring down Ruchnis into the Gashmi, but the physical object remains physical. It's a lower level than the source. Nor in them Gashmis mamshachais Ruchni. In this physical thing, you bring down the Ruchnis Gechayas. But that's the from the Shtalshelas. That's the whole concept of the Shtalshelas. What does the Shtalshelas mean? As in them Tachten is do ulapome meich meir from the million. Shtalshelas mean there's a higher level and it gets lower and lower till it comes down. And what we're saying is, Ishtalshas means it came down, now it's lower. But in that lower one is connected to the Sheirish, and sometimes that Sheirish could even shine in it. Or by the Tachten bleibt lamata from the million. The lower part, the physical part, remains down here, means lower. It's not the Sheirish. Sheirish is Ruch in this Gashma. Schenke, but machzah shekel is the Chiddush. Machzah shekel, the Chiddush is, at the Matbeya Gashmas besieden geben, is sie atzmo vet Matbeya shalish. Achibur shnei hofrim. It itself becomes a fire, which is ruchnius. So this is a combination of two opposites. Normally, it's not a combination. Any mitzvah has ruchnius in it. In itself, to a certain degree, it's a combination of two opposites. Gashmi ruchni. That's why before Matan Torah couldn't happen. But now the pale, it's not a real combination because the Gashmi remains Gashmi, the Ruchni, Elamai, the Ruchnis comes into Gashmi, which is also the Chiddush. Here we're saying that it becomes Ruchni and it stays Gashmi. It becomes Ruchni. Afila the Reish Gashmi for Elam Haza, he says. Here it's two. Why is it two opposites? Because Gashmis and Ruchnis are two opposites. But he says even the physical fire in this world is it's a complete opposite than a coin. Matbeya is offer. A coin is made of offer. We know there is. You say the offer, there's dust, sand, and that's what it is. It's daimim. When in offer and in sand itself, it says it's deep down in the ground. The yesod achinomo, the lowest of the four elements. Uneshe, the yesod achigabeyanai, and eish is from the four, the highest. There's eish, ruach, maim, offer. Offer is the lowest. Eish is the highest. So even physical fire and the physical fire and the physical daimim objects, certainly of offer, are two opposites. Certainly, when you think about it in the Ruchnisdik aspect, that you think of the opposites being in the Ruchnisdik, look at it, it's certainly two opposites. We know you say this, offers and connected. This is already a Ruchnisdik word. We know there are four Ruchnisdik elements, Atzilas, Bri, Yitzir, Asiyah. And the four Eish Ruach Mayim Offer are parallel to these four. Offer is connected Elam Asiyah. Offer is parallel to the lowest level in the Elamis, which is Asiyah. Elam Achitach, the lowest level, lowest Elam. Eish is connected Elam Atzilas, Elam Achiyelyan. Eish fire is connected Elam Atzilas, there's a higher one. So here we see from the Ruchnisdik aspects, from the Ruchnisdik Eish, which is Atzilas, to the Ruchnisdik Inyan of Matbeya, which is Offer, which is Asiyah. So there's certainly two opposites. Fire Bechlal from Offer are opposites, but the spiritual part of it is certainly. But the Chibur for Dishnei Hofchim, Matbeya Gashmis with Matbeya Shalish, the combination of these two opposites, the coin, physical coin, with the coin of fire. Certainly, it's not a physical. Physical fire would also be a two opposites. But this is not a physical fire. The Eibishter took the fire from Tachas under the Kisei HaKoved, and he said, which means whatever you're going to give down here is this. So the coin down here becomes Eish of Atzilus. So certainly, this is the opposite. Not only the two things are opposites, it's the opposite of what happens in Seder Ishtalshus. When things come down, as we said before, everything comes down to Seder Ishtalshus. This never happens. The Gashmi doesn't turn into Ruchni. The Gashmi stays Gashmi. In the Gashmi, you answer the Sheirish higher. Was Ishtalshus meint canal as the Tachten is Mishtalshul, but made Lamata from the million. Ishtalshus means that the lower one comes from the higher. So he still remains lower. So he still remains Gashmi. So the Gashmi is the thing remains Gashmi. So here we're talking about that the Matbeya Gashmi is turned into Ruchnius is opposites within Seder Ishtalshelis. Noch mehr, was ist Heipach Afilu von Seder von Teire, was ist Hechef? Ishtalshelis is the concept of Welt. And this is the opposite of the Ishtalshelis. It's even the opposite of the way things are in Teire. Afilu von the Seder beyond Teire. It's opposite if the Seder, the way it's set up in Teire. From the Seder in Teire is in a neif from the Ishtalshelis. In Torah, we find also that there is a shtalshelis. There's a higher level and a lower level. Where do we find in Torah different levels? Chelik, Apshat, V'Sikeneged El Masi. We find four ways to learn Torah. Pshat, Remez, Drush, Seid. And it says the same thing. Pshat is Keneged El Masiyah. Seid is Keneged El Matzilas. So it's a shtalshelis. That the Chelik Apshat, which is parallel to Asiyah, is a mishtalshel, like drei shlovim from Chelik Asod. It comes three steps. From Sod, the Remez, Drush, then goes down to Pshat, and so Pshat is a shtalshelis going three steps from Chelik Asod was Kneged Atzilus, from the Sod, which is the secrets of Torah Kneged Atzilus. When he's b'meila nideriker ubaharba from him, so Pshat is much lower. Even though we say in Pshat you have this Chelik Haruchni, the Seid, because it's in shtalshel from Seid, but it remains Pshat, and it's very much lower from it. On the Riber, so since we see that there is in Seder Ishtalshelis, even there is no such thing as coming down and not only being down there in the lower thing, but it changes the lower thing. So no one could accomplish this. A malach couldn't do this. Even Torah couldn't do this. Even though normally Torah, he says in Order 37, we know, has a control over the creation, over the Gashmias, and could change the Gashmias, could change the past as it brings from Yerushalmi. But this Torah couldn't even do. was they alle seine Befen Stalshelis. Everything that they could do, what Malach could do, and even what Torah does, there's a seder to it. And Mele Mugbal get the Stalshelis. It's limited to the way the order goes in the Stalshelis. So this is something no one could do, nor blaze HaKadosh Baruch Hu bekvede v'atzma Deibishter himself. Was erod beicher gewen, bertzeinei, nifchas sholem behecherach and Seder Stalshelis. Who made up the Seder Stalshelis and the order, the way things go? Deibishter made it. Oh, so he's the one that made it because he decided, not because it had to be. So he decided to make a Seder Stalshelis. Zayin akel yochel nimen noises. Deibishter could do anything. And Deibishter nimen there's nothing impossible. The nimen noise, the words mean he is impossible of impossibilities. There's nothing impossible. Is beyicholte zum avatel sein mit Seder Stalshelis. Only Deibishter himself has the power to change the whole order of Stalshelis, mechaber sein zwei hofkim, and to combine two opposites from Gashmis and Ruchnis. The change from Gashmis to Ruchnis, Adimatbeya Gashmis will werden bepeil in Elam Haze, Eich Matbeya Shleish, that the physical coin should also become a Matbeya, not changed into Matbeya Shleish. It should remain a Matbeya Gashmis, and it should nevertheless become a fire, become a Ruchni, which is his fire. And the Rebbe in Order 39 brings an example. It says, by the Eibush, the Koshel Azavkon Kikriyas Yamsuf, that it's hard for the Eibush to make a Shidach, like it was hard for him to make Kriyas Yamsuf. And the question, see this in all this for him asked, but you mean it's hard for the Eibush to make Kriyas Yamsuf? So the Loshen, that the answer is that not the word hard means it's against the Seder that the Eibush himself made. Because there, the way Chassidus says that it's the opposite combination of two opposites, and that's something that normally the Eibush doesn't do, and he could do it, but it's called kosher. Same thing here. The Eibush should make it so that it's a Matbeya Shel Gashmi. Nevertheless, it is also a Matbeya Shel Eish. That's something that only the Eibush could do. And that's what's special here. When those see the tshuva from the Eibush in the Medrash, and this is what the Eibush answered him, the way it says in the Medrash. And look at the Lashon of the Medrash. It says, Matbeya Shel Eish heitzi HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Eibush that took out the Matbeya. The Omarle, and he told Moshe Zayit Nish give. HaKadosh Baruch Hu daike. It's the Eibush that. Dafke, only the Eibush himself to do it. And then he adds, Undur Chamire. And he also had to say, he could just have shown him, but he also had to say, and explains why. Because the Vereinigung from Gashmis and Ruchnis, as a Matbeya Gashmis, Lavernech Matbeya Shleish, the combination, the connection, Gashmis and Ruchnis, even the physical coin should become in Matbeya Shleish, Beide Bepasachas, both at the same time, Kesse Bekeif and Afshe, it remains silver, and it's a kapora for the Nefesh, can gemacht werden, nor durch HaKadosh Baruch Hu. First of all, it had to say HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because only he could do that. Was had Bertzeine Beiche given Seder Stalshelis, and Beshita is nicht multiple nicht Stalshelis for Yochel Levatle. He was the one that chose to make a Seder Stalshelis. So certainly that he is not limited to whatever the Seder is, and he could change it. And then Valderech, the meaning from Bria Yesh Meyayin. So automatically this comes out that this what he did is similar to the concept of David creating the world, something from nothing. Was Kenzain, it says it's also two opposites. Because Betzem, after he created the world, Rebbe doesn't say these words, but I'm explaining, after he created the world was still nothing. So Bam is in the world, but he did create a Yesh. So the world really is a combination of two opposites. It's not a Metzias, and then the Metzias that David made. And it says, who could do it? So it says in Tanya, was ken sein nor fun mehusa v'atzmusa shel ha'maitzik baruch hu, could only be from David, who's the creator of everything, starting from Atzilis, shemetziusa v'atzmusa v'eina olam ezil shekodem lichas v'sholem. David, every other spiritual level has a source, came from a higher level. The Eibishter himself has no source. He is the source. He is the source of everything. That's why he is the only one that could create the world, Yesh Me'ayin. Because, and the Chassidus says why? Because to do this concept that the world is not and yes at the same time, and it stays, it is Gashmi. That could, and it's a Gashmi that's a Metzias that could even make a mistake and think it's a real Metzias. Could only come from, and the people from the world could think that there's no source. They think this is a Metzias on its own. Only could come from David, who's really the Metzias on his own and has no source. He is it. So the same thing here also, that David did by the coin is similar to Yesh Me'ayin. And therefore, there had to be, David should say it. Why? Al derech yivin, the meaning for Yesh Me'ayin. Just like when David created the world, something from nothing. How did David create the world? By speaking. With 10 statements, David created the world. Nasser says, with the words of Hashem, with the speech of Hashem, he created the Shemayim. He's Azayah and Negeda is Havus as Matbeya Gashmas Loben Eich. So same thing when creating this inyan, the two opposites at the same time, that the Matbeya of Gashmi turns into Eish and remains that as Dosver Tuvgitan durch Dibur HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what David had to say it. So David had to say it, had to show it, because it's David himself, and not to say it. The Dibur HaKadosh Baruch Hu say Yitnu. And the Matbeya Gashmas didn't give Yitnu, but Zayin Eich Eish Zeh. The fact, the words of David, that this they should give, meaning that what they give, which is a physical Matbeya, the Yitnu will be the Zeh, will be the Matbeya Shalish in its source. But Mahavik ben dem Chidush, those words created something, created this Chidush. Just like when you created the world in the creation, it came through his Dibur. This is a new creation, similar to that. It's like a Yesh Miyayin type of thing, and that came through the words of Hashem. The Rebbe says you could ask. Sicher hat Moshe Rabbeinu gewusst, ich eide der Rebbe hat ihm erwiesen mit Bei Shleish, as es ist Bichelte ist Baruch zum Kaber sein Zehofke. In other words, the question we said before, Moshe Rabbeinu was wondering, there are two opposites. How can it be? In other words, there's no logic. He believed that it could be, but he asked, it makes no sense. And the question is now, what was his question? He didn't know that the Eibishter could do it if he wants it, so the Eibishter did it. He didn't know himself, as es ist Bicholte is Baruch zum Mechaber sein Stehofchen, that the Eibishter could combine two opposites. Was der Gefund ist verstandig, that the Eibishter kann Mechaber sein, die Matbeya Gashmi mit der Sherish Beruchen. So obviously the Eibishter could connect the physical coin to the root Yeruchnias. But the Kushel Aduch, comes like the Kasha, was did me information, my Yuchalodem Litten Kefer Avshin. So what did he wonder? Wonder how could it be? The Eibishter could do it. So we still need more explanation. He wondered in Seichel. But even in Seichel he could understand. In Seichel he knew the Eibishter could do it. The question was, there's no logic. Why is there no logic here? This itself is a logic, that the Eibishter could do it. He's coming to Bedover, so there's a few answers. Man, amongst the answers. First of all, in Chochma v'Seichel de Kedusha, Moshe darf azaz zayin tamua. Because Moshe's Madrege is called Chochma. If you look in Kabbalah and Chassidus, it's Madrege of Chochma, Madrege of Seichel. He has to ask the question. Now, Seichel has to understand. Here we're saying, he understands that there's such a thing possible, but how is it possible? He didn't understand. And that's not a problem. He didn't question it. Nor zayin de kachuk is a nit maharer. He's not questioning it, not doubting it, but he still has to wonder, because that's what Seichel is. Aber we can't sagen, dass sie amishpot oder redes. But it's not understood. This is not, he didn't call it chukah, but on the other hand, it's definitely not an Eidus Amish, because it makes no sense. So therefore, Moshe wondered, because he had to wonder, because he didn't, in Seichel, he knew David could do it, and he knew David everything is fine, but he still had to say, my Seichel, which is my Madrege, I don't understand it. And the second thing is, Vibald, as the David hat nicht Madrege, when the Machze Shekel als Chukah, since David didn't identify the Machze Shekel as a Chukah, is sicher as es ist do as Borav denkt mir. So Moshe was sure there must be an explanation. Und die Mitzvah macht a Shekel geht rein in the Stalsches von Teire Mitzvahs. There must be an explanation, there must be a logic, a rationale to it, and it must fall into the Seder of Stalsches of Teire Mitzvahs. Noch mehr in dem Gufa, nicht in dem Suk von Chukah. And in that itself, it's not a Chukah. He knew it's not a Chukah. He knew Moshe David could do it, but then let's call it Chukah. Since he didn't go to Chukah, means there must be a logical explanation. So he says, what is the logical explanation? Und das ist eigentlich der Diuk und der Tshuva b'Medesh. This is what the Medesh says in the answer. He showed it to Moshe. Why did he show it? Because we said before, but didn't answer it really. They just told him this idea that the Rebbe says, that told him I could do it. I could make them with Be'eshel, Gashmi into Eish, Ruchni. Why did they have to show it to him? So now we understand why. To take off the question that Moshe had. Not the question, he didn't doubt it, but the wonder. Is nicht genug zu sagen, dem Minion zu Moshe. Wouldn't be enough David would tell him, I'm Kel Yochel, I could do it. Weil damit bleibt das at mir, was man kann nicht verstehen bei Seichel. So he'll know it's true. But in Seichel, he has no explanation. And we're saying before, he's looking for an explanation because it seems that it's not a chukah. Nor es hat gedarf sein, hey Rei, David had to show him. As the Pule, wie die Matbeya Gashmis, wirkt der Matbeya Shalesh, sein und Eifen Shalriya. He should see how the Matbeya Gashmis could turn into fire. Die Sache ist begile mamish in der Neifen von Zayitno. When he showed it to him, this not only showed him the coin, he showed him this inyan of the coin Gashman turning into Ruchni. Like showed him with the finger. And the Rebbe doesn't tie shoes, but what it means seems to me to say, when you show something, you have no questions. We always learn that. When you hear something, you believe something, and it's 100% true in your mind. But if someone questions you, you have a question. I don't know the answer. There's something that's fishy here. But if you see something, there is no questions. No matter how much he doesn't understand, in Seichel, yes, it is. So David showed him, and what it means, he didn't just show him the coin of fire, he showed him how this is the coin that you will be giving. Unochmer, it goes further. Their gilu is not nur by Meshen. This that he showed him is not only by Meshen. They're by all the Yidden. Azeh and Esin is beitim v'zayitna. He showed him that by every Yid, this is what they're going to be giving. As in their matbeya was a given state the gilu eich as is zeh matbeya shaleish, that in the coin that they will give, the physical coin, is this union of this. And he showed it to Moshe, which means by that he's showing it to everybody. And Tissa uses a lotion in Gemara Chum that Leib showed him lahafchin heitev al yizel edil Yisrael. He made him see it clearly. Tissa says, and he should be able to tell it to the Eden. So it means whatever Moshe saw came. Mamash gave it over to the Eden. So David showed him in a way that he took away all the questions. So the question was not down. He knew David could do it. The question was, but I don't understand it. And it seems from you want me to understand. He showed it, and not that he showed it, he understood it already. In other words, not that he could explain it, but it's so clear, like it's in your seichel. Yes, in them never said, now I'm going to add another point. That David showed him Matbeya fire, and we said because he wanted to show him that the Gashmis Matbeya becomes Ruchni. How did he describe Ruchni? By showing him fire. Now, it's not so. You don't have to show fire. So Matbeya was sitting given is not nur a Matbeya Gashmis and Reir the Matbeya Shalmaidam Taskisa Akovet. But David wanted to show that this is not a physical coin only, but this is only also a coin that comes from the shayrish of it under the Kisa Kovet is in this coin. He didn't have to show him a coin of fire. In the Shayrish Lamaila, the heavens and the spiritual levels, there's a concept of water. It says Michael Sar Shemaim. There's Malach Michael is the Sar, the Malach of water. We find others also. Why did they when he wanted to show him that in the coin of the Yidden there will be the fire? The Ruchni is why did they show him fire? Why didn't show water, but it's being in the Ruchni. You could say, der Mieter der Rebischte bewiesen und durch dem aufgetan, die Nisine von 18 Shekel so sein, nicht nur in Ruchni, nur in Ruchni ist Guf, in von Eish. The Rebischte wanted to show him that by giving 18 Shekel, not only you have the Ruchnis in it, which could be Mayim or Eish, it's a type of Ruchnis which is hinted in the fire. Something special with fire. Why? The Unterschied zwischen Eish and the andere say the difference between fire and the other elements, which is Ofer, Mayim, and Ruach, is like this. Offer Mayim Beruach Kipshut on the matter with the Funde Verstandig eben Gates Shem Shem Ruchni. Down here physically, sand, water, wind, air, Posh Begashmias, and whatever we're going to say about Gashmias shows that that's how it is. It mirrors itself in the same idea in the Ruchnisike sense. Is the difference is between fire and all these. At the end, you say the Zanyere Del Mata. Other ones come down, or the Cholayese Bleibim came, or they stay. The nature is they come down. Take offer always falls down. Then Mayim also goes down, but he stays in one place. Wind, but there's no union of going up. The nature of fire is always to go up. Fire goes up. So much so that you need something to do something special to keep it down. You need a wick. You need something to hold, otherwise the fire will right away go up. And this is what David showed Moshe, that he wanted to show him that the coin down here becomes Ruchni. And what type of Ruchni? The type of fire. Meaning, that when Yidden gemacht shekels, nicht nur an the sinne von Matbei Ruchnis. It's not only that we said till now that what you're giving is really the Ruchnis, the coin becomes Ruchni, nor in them Gufe beifen von Eish. In the Ruchnis Gufe, it's a type of fire. As es hat die Tchune von Eish, ständig in seiner Meile, it constantly has this nature of going up higher, going from one level to a higher level to a higher level. And the meat is noch mehr yumtig wie Matbeish Gashmis kanuftig kevanashe. This adds even more how a coin of fire could bring the kapara, the kefer, the redemption for the nefesh, for the soul. The bald as a hot is the Tchune von Eish, was weiß der Falei Lamailo, because it has the nature of fire, that means that it always wants to go higher. Does der weiter sich from Chumnius and the Schifet Zeruchnish. This shows that you're going away going far out, trying to get further away from chumnius, from coarseness, from gashmius, and always trying to go to ruchnius. So if you're in that level, it shows more even why this could bring a kapora for the nefesh, because this idea that you always want to go higher certainly helps to bring a keif and nafshe. The fun lent up a hero on the floor in the Beit Sodom. This teaches us a hero lesson in our service of Hashem today. Even though the mitzvah of giving Machzah Shekel mainly was in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, the mod gedarf geben the Machzah Shekel to the Kabbalah Sibur from the ganze year, when they had to give every year Machzah Shekel, and they used that to bringing the communal korbanos sacrifices a whole year. But now we don't have that. Von deswegen is noch is man around the Minig Yisrael. Even nowadays, there's a Minig Yisrael, and the order that was which Torah here. Minig Yisrael is Torah, so this is Torah itself. And the Minig is Litan Kedem Purim, to give before Purim. This is what the Ramah says. You should give before Purim, Machzah Shekel. And Loshen in the Ramah is Beleil Purim Kedem Shemispal Mincha. On the night of Purim, before you daven Mincha, the Rebbe says in the order, the word the night of Purim. Some says you got to find out the real what the words really. Maybe it's a mistake, because before Mincha at night, it meant during the day. But he says you have to give a machzis min hamatbeya kavua beis hamokim beis hazman, half of the coin, that set coin of every place and at that time, which is a zeicher machzis hashekel shenesim beorder. It's a zeicher, a remembrance of the machzis shekel they used to give in the Beis Hamikdash time, and they gave it in the order. And since in the parsha it says 3 times the word truma, so you should give 3 machzah shekel. But we see from here that there is an inyan of machzah shekel, and it's Torah. It's a midik. In addition to that, in every Eid there is a spiritual mishkan, Remember, like it says, the Chazal says, make a mikdash and I will rest amongst them. It doesn't say in it. The teacher, that means in every single person. So every single person has a Beis Hamikdash. If we understand that that's the inyan from the Siddur Machzah Shekel Beruchnius, from welchem macht the Mishkan, from the Mishkan Ruchish B'Teichen. So we understand that nowadays we also have the Machzah Shekel. Whatever Machzah Shekel was in the beginning, we have it now too, because it's a minig, and the Mishkan is there Beruchnius. And when, just like we said before, that we made the Adonim, the sockets from the Machzah, we make it now too Beruchnius. So all that we said before will apply to our Machzah Shekel now. And that them is the era from the minya from Zeg Yitnu Matbei Shalish. This is the lesson when they Zeg. This they should give a Matbei Shalish. And as we said before, that the Matbei itself, Kashmi, turns into Ruchni. That means as when Eden give him a pruta le mitzvah, the tzedakah, Eden give a coin, a pruta, to a mitzvah, to tzedakah. Or you help a poor man, not by giving him physical money, but you speak to him nicely, you make him feel better. Dibur Gashmi, physically speaking, by the 5, there's 5 parts to the mouth when you speak. The parts of some letters come from the teeth, some from the lips, some from the tongue, some from the throat. So all that is Gashmi. So when you do that, it is nicht stamam at the Gashmis. It's not just that you're involved giving a physical coin, or if you speak, a dibur Gashmi, it's a physical dibur. It has the ruchni, it becomes ruchni. When in them gufa mit der Tchuna von Eish, it becomes ruchni. And what kind of ruchni? Like we said, if the ruchni is a fire, but Stevie is our standing the mind goes up to mind. I just want to mention that before the Rebbe said that Machzah Shekel is different than tzedakah, different than any other mitzvah. So what the Rebbe is doing here is doing bechlolas. That the main thing is a Machzah Shekel. By regular mitzvah, it's not like that. But there must be some aspect in other mitzvahs that is taken from the mitzvah of Machzah Shekel. And for Machzah Shekel, lernt man eich op of alle mitzvahs. Machzah Shekel, we learn for all the mitzvahs. As jeder Pula von Aiden in Yonah Teire mitzvahs, any act that he does in connection to Teire mitzvahs, Chosh is ein in Islamisch geworden und Dvorim Gashmi Dafka, even though that was put into physical things. Tzitzis with Semer Gashmi, Tzitzis is made from physical wool. Tefillin Beklav Gashmi, Tefillin is made from physical parchment. Kayetz Bebishar mitzvah, same thing with all the mitzvahs. We just need Blaze Pula Gashmi. It's not just a physical act, nor says Eich Matbei Shleish Aninya Furuchnis V'Dush. It's Aninya Furuchni. And we're saying here that we all know. We knew from before. Every mitzvah you do is a ruchnis. Why are you doing the mitzvah? Sir, it's a ruchnis. There's a chiddush here. Every time you use a dover gashmi, this is a big chiddush about what we always learn in chassidus. We always learn in chassidus that when you do a mitzvah gashmis, it's a ruchni. What's ruchni? Because there's a mitzvah there. Now we're saying there's some aspect in the gashmi that the gashmi itself is ruchni. And from them is verstandig der Gedel Yilev Afloim der Minya von Chayes, Warmkeit in Slavish, Eshel Dusha and the Rabbeide von Aiden. This adds, we understand how important it is. The second, we said before, it automatically becomes fire, ruchni, especially if you do it with the fire of your neshama. So just like we said, since we said now that by every mitzvah it becomes fire, so we add the second thing, especially that we understand the greatness that if you do it with a chayas, with life, with warmth, with excitement, you do it with the fire of dusha in the Raveh. So that is great in the Raveh from Ayidin B'chol Inyon Atei Mitzvah. If you do that, what it does in anything that's connected to Torah Mitzvahs biz, as in Yeder Pulazayne is Niked Imadbeish, till you actually could see it. In other words, if you have the proper eyes, if you see, you could see how even though he's holding a physical coin or he's holding a physical pair of tefillin, but that physical pair of tefillin is really ruchni. While it's physical, it's ruchni. It is ruchni. Not it has in it chayes ruchni. He says, "Mekayim dem tzivoy," till you've come, you have so much eish in you that you fulfill the commandment by the mizbeach. Eish tomi took it on mizbeach. But it says there should be a constant fire on the mizbeach, never to be extinguished. And Chassidus says when it says mizbeach, mizbeach also flies to the heart. It's called the mizbeach. It means that in your heart, you will not only have that fire when you actually do a mitzvah, but you could come to a point where it's eish tomid, it's constantly there. The fire of a lakus is constantly there in the person, in the gashmis of the person, the gashmis of the object, and in the person himself, there's a constant fire and the constant ruchni. And the fire, the ruchni of the fire, means you constantly want to go higher and higher.